Okay, well, I guess we can go ahead and jump in, even though
Yeah,
I know Shirley will have other people join. I just want to make
yeah.
sure we make the most of the time with our guest today. And I'd like to thank my good friend and colleague, Michelle Proctor, for joining us today. Michelle is currently the Director of Operations for Risk, Fraud, and Compliance Solutions at SAS. And in this capacity, she's responsible for the daily operations of 700 global resources across R&D, risk and finance advisory services, portfolio strategy and operations. Michelle is an incredible advocate. I'm so excited to have her join us today. She serves on the Diversity Council for SAS as the sponsor for SAS Women's Initiatives Network, which is where we first met each other maybe 10 years
Yes.
ago now,
Yes.
Michelle.
Yep.
And she's one of two leaders heading up the externally facing Women Analytics program. Michelle holds a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering, and prior to SAS, she worked at IBM and NASA. She is extremely passionate about STEM, and she volunteers her spare time to educational outreach through several nonprofits and is serving in her 9th year on the board
Wow.
of Dress for Success. So
Yep.
welcome, Michelle. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you. I'm excited. This is great. It's a good opportunity to share a little bit about what we do. So,
And I'm so excited to have your voice here. I have long admired Michelle's advocacy. And fun fact, without my meeting Michelle, I would not have gotten into any of this advocacy work myself.
mm,
So it's truly following in Michelle's footsteps. So I think it is very nice to have her here with us today,
yeah,
and a fun opportunity to collaborate again.
yeah.
Um, so why don't we jump into Dress for
Sure,
Success, and
sure.
let's chat a little bit about, for those people who might be unfamiliar, can you
Yeah,
share the mission of Dress for Success and the
yeah.
unique role it plays in supporting women around the world?
Absolutely. So, just at the highest level, Dress for Success is a nonprofit organization that provides unemployed or underemployed women with the resources they need to be able to propel themselves forward, whether that's career coaching or professional attire, a combination of a myriad of things. We basically empower women and give them the opportunity to achieve financial independence. And it's not just getting them employment at like the local Starbucks or a a smaller establishment. It's giving them employment opportunities which lead to careers and being able to have a stepping stone to more. And it's an amazing organization.
I think that, I mean, I've admired Dress for Success for that very reason for a long time, right?
Yeah.
I feel very passionately about how can we help support each other. There are many reasons why a woman might have transitioned out of the workforce. I used to work with a group that did exactly that in a different capacity in terms of our caregiving journey. So when I first got involved with Dress for Success, I was just so excited. I also think, well, we'll talk more about this, but I think that people, often associate Dress for Success with the clothing drives and things like that, but
Hmm.
there's so much more that the
Yeah.
organization offers in support of women, and I'm excited to dive in more about that today.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what first drew you to get involved with Dress for Success?
Yeah. And I try to tell the story without crying because, when you see that you have an impact on somebody that changes their life in a positive way, it's hard. It's hard for something like that not to kind of grip your heartstrings. And at least for me, I wanted more. And I've had many opportunities to serve the community, and I feel like I'm going there to help somebody, and then I walk away with so much more than I ever anticipated that you know I would I would receive, and those types of opportunities propel me to do more. And this one particular circumstance, I've been in leadership my whole time at SAS, and I've been here for almost 14 years. And there was a small group of leaders who had been tapped on the shoulder to go out to Dress for Success. I think it was in the Raleigh office, and they had a person that dropped out, and at the very last minute, they were scrambling to find another leader to basically step in. And ultimately, what we were doing is going and talking to women who have polished their resumes in such a way where they were ready to have conversations with leaders to help them get ready for job interviews. And serendipitously, I got paired with a young woman who was probably 21 or 22 years old. And as I was, they allow you to go off into your own little corner and have like a dedicated conversation, and the individual hands you the resume, and she did, and I looked at it, and it read backwards. And so I had the opportunity to share with her that the structure of how a resume should look. And during that conversation, and you got to keep in mind the time frame, this was like 2013 or so. She had shared with me that her mom had cancer, and it sounded pretty bad. It's one of those things where you don't want to ask too many questions, because there's a kind of a fine line between personal and professional. But at the same time, the empathetic part of me was inquisitive. And she also shared that she had like a younger sister who was maybe 3 or 4 years younger than her, was still in high school, and how she was helping to take care of her sister while her mom was sick. And proceeded to mention, and she wasn't she wasn't saying this in a negative way. She was just sharing circumstances were pretty dire, and she had to make some decisions as it came to her cell phone. And at the time, she chose a data plan over the phone service, because in her mind, she had learned that employers' first line of defense usually is to send an email, and she wanted to be able to respond to an email. And the way she described it is, I can always get to a landline and make arrangements for a phone call. But in that portion of the conversation, first of all, like, for a young person to be in a situation to where they are evaluating finances so heavily that they had to choose between a data plan and a phone plan, like, it just changed my perspective completely. And then that night, I remember just like not being able to sleep as I'm tucking my kids in, and I am a manager, and I review tons of resumes during the hiring process. And for my own purposes, I always keep like this, like my favorite resume formats off to the side. And I couldn't sleep that night. I went in and I grabbed the contents of her resume, which was all around service. She was working like in a clothing store. And gosh, it's hard to even describe. So I just spent that evening kind of polishing her resume, pulled out one of my formats, just edited it and sent it to her. And it was that experience that, I mean, to be able to see that 30 or 45-minute conversation can help change the trajectory of a young person's life, and subsequently impact her sister, and the ripple in the water just moves on. So I mean, that's a long-winded story, but that is the truth. That is how I got hooked. And then it was like, okay, how else can I help? And
Right.
and then just doors opened slowly, one step at a time, and I just moved in that direction.
Wow.
Yeah.
I so love that story, Michelle, and the impact one person can have in their own community. And I
Yeah.
love what you said about the ripple effect, because you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
When we help a woman into her career, right?
Yeah.
It impacts families and beyond. There's so many people
Yeah.
beyond just that one person.
Hmm.
I think that's amazing and wow. And I think that that's wonderful. So can you speak a little bit more about that impact?
Yeah.
Um, can you share a moment where you felt that true impact of Dress for Success?
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to switch gears just a little bit and talk about the founder of Dress for Success of the Triangle. Her name is Pat Nathan. She is a absolutely beautiful individual who had an extremely successful career. I think it was Dell that she spent a majority of her time with. Just uh, an amazing leader, and like I said, success in all the ways, right? Being in the right place when stock options were given to her, and just being able to flourish her wealth in a way that a lot of us kind of only look at from a distance. But she had shared that she was in the London area and had some suits that she wanted to donate, and donated them to Dress for Success in the London area. And long story short, she shared about going in and offering her services as a career coach, and the experience that she had in helping a young woman come in and get fitted for a suit. Because typically how we operate is we offer not just services to help polish your resume and get you ready for that interview, but we give you an outfit to help. And when I say outfit, it's like head to toe, everything you could possibly need to go and feel confident in an interview. And she was describing how she was helping this woman get dressed, and had her all polished and ready. And she was standing in front of her and watching her, look at herself as she's getting ready. And she glanced over at the jewelry section and saw this like strand of pearls, and she reached over and grabbed the strand and kind of just wrapped it around the woman's neck. And the smile on the woman's face changed, and it was enough to impact Pat's perspective in a way that's profound. And she was finishing her career, retiring, and transitioning back to the Triangle. This was around 2008. She said that moment with that woman in the dressing room kind of was the impetus to the start of coming here and beginning the Dress for Success chapter in the Triangle area. And that was in 2008. And if we can all remember what it was like in 2008, there was continual layoffs. I mean, what a time to be starting a nonprofit like that in multiple ways. Number one, it was almost impossible to get funding back then because as our own purses tightened, the first thing you typically stop doing is your charitable giving. So for her to start this organization at a time like that, and for it to flourish, because who doesn't want to be a part of something so impactful? Now looking back, here she's been leading or tangentially part of this effort for 17 years. And the number of women that she has been able to impact is like more than 20,000. And that's just in this area. It's, there's lots of impactful stories like that, but that's the one that kind of resonated with me as my own story. The two kind of parallel in the way you feel by helping somebody else, just seeing that you are making a difference.
Oh my gosh, I hadn't heard that story actually
Yeah,
before.
yeah. She's an
Um,
amazing leader.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's incredible. Yes, wow. Well, thank you for that. So, one of the words that comes to mind, and actually, as I was speaking to some friends about this event before today, we were talking about the word empowerment.
Mhm,
So can you talk about what does empowerment mean to you personally,
mhm,
and how do
mhm.
you see it play out through this organization?
Yeah. So For me, it's kind of, I described it in the two stories. It's literally giving somebody the confidence and the support and the resources so they can take care of their own future. Um, and sometimes it's just a matter of helping a woman identify that she's worthy, because sometimes we're our own worst enemy. And I'm like number one professor of a person who has had imposter syndrome their whole life. And you see a number of individuals come in, and we all have it, right? The person on the left that kind of tells you you can't do it or you're not worthy. And one of the things that I try to encourage people to do is talk to yourself as though you are talking to your best friend, because nobody in a million years would ever tell your best friend you're crazy, you can't do it. Quite the opposite. You would cheer them on and encourage them, and it's exactly the same thing, right? Just giving individuals the courage and the confidence to know that they have the strength inside themselves to be able to take that next step forward.
Well, I think that's how beautiful is that?
Mhm.
And imposter syndrome is something we've talked about many times in this
I'm
group,
sure. I'm
right?
sure.
And I mean, I usually say, when I'm in my coaching sessions with people, and I get asked about imposter syndrome, I usually say, I'm
Yeah.
like, everyone experiences imposter syndrome, men and women. And I said, I frankly think anyone who
Mhm.
says they don't isn't telling me the truth, because
Yes,
we all
it's
we
true.
all struggle with it. But especially, I
Yeah.
also love what you said about that voice and speaking kindly to
Yeah.
yourself, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes when you're going through that interview process, especially in you mentioned 2008, the climate today,
Yeah.
I think is very similar in some
Exactly.
ways,
Yes.
right? Right. And
Yes,
it's
totally.
it's very
Yeah.
tough market. Absolutely.
Yes.
So I think what a
Yes.
difference that makes, when you
Yeah.
teach someone that so they can do that for themselves.
Yes.
Well, as I mentioned, I'm certainly a big fan of Dress for Success locally here in the Research Triangle Park region of Raleigh. So can you talk a little bit about how the Triangle chapter of Dress for Success is making a difference in the lives of women in this community?
Yeah. It's amazing because COVID has actually done us a favor. And I say that a little bit tongue in cheek, right? Prior to COVID, we were focused on face to face services. So a woman would typically make arrangements to come to one of our offices, be fitted in the boutique, get all the services, and they were all in person. And then when COVID hit, of course, we went through the natural crisis that most nonprofits do, like, oh snap, what do we do? Because funding, again, it was one of those situations where the typical rounds of funding. I mean, even businesses were cutting back on charitable giving during that time. But it did open the door for us to be able to help women virtually. And before that, I would say we didn't do many virtual services, so it made us have to pivot. And now we're at a point where we are helping probably about 1,000 women each quarter, and that only grows obviously because of the ability to reach online individuals. And another example that I could give, I don't even remember what the event was, but um, it was during COVID, and I had posted something about Dress for Success, and there was an individual in Barbados who had reached out and was sharing that she was technical and it was a developer prior to COVID, and before COVID, she and her family moved to Barbados, and uh, they were in the like service industry, like tourism, and she was describing like 3 or 4 businesses that she had helped to get off the ground, and it was like ice cream and that kind of stuff, but service oriented, and obviously all that had stopped. And she was sharing that she wanted to get back to the Triangle area, and if I had any ideas of how she could potentially do that. And in that time, we were shifting from um, offering our services in person to virtual, and she was able to like join
Wow.
one of our cohorts. And before I knew it, she was like talking to managers at Epic Games, and
Wow.
just doors. Like really, never in a million years would I have been able to say that, there's a silver lining to COVID helping a nonprofit organization such as this. But I mean, that's just one of many examples where, the ripple in the water was able to grow because we had to look at our services differently. And it's kind of cool to have
Well,
little gems like that.
yeah, absolutely. Well, actually, I don't know if you saw in the news yesterday, but Raleigh is now ranked as the number 4 top city people are
Oh,
moving to in the United States. So
not
if you think
surprising.
about that influx of people and the
Yes.
women coming in here
Yes.
that need jobs, and
Yes.
I think that yeah, the need for Dress for Success is only going to
Hmm.
continue to
Yeah.
grow, and the traffic
Yeah.
I think proves it too.
Yes. Agreed. Yep.
Oh, getting worse every year.
Yep.
Well, that's awesome. Well, it's okay. Um, let's shift gears a little bit here. Can you talk a little bit about what are some of the challenges women face in entering or re-entering the workforce, and how
Hmm.
does Dress for Success help them overcome those barriers?
Yeah. Well, number one, we all know layoffs in the triangle have been happening. I mean, as far as I can remember, 2008 is when it started. But it's inevitable, and it comes in waves. And there have been times where literally I have found myself across the table from a woman who um, typically will have a PhD. Like sometimes as I'm interviewing them, I think to myself, okay, I could totally be working for you. You could be interviewing me. The individual just found themselves at a company where perhaps the entire division got laid off. That is not uncommon, not at all. And then there are some instances of ageism, I guess you could say, where maybe they're not able to, or it takes longer to find work because of how seasoned they are. We'll say it that way.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I love about Dress is we're constantly cultivating connections, not just in the triangle but beyond, and we're creating avenues for women to be able to have relationships, which then potentially turn into employment opportunities, most of which stem from the fact that we commonly do the career coaching or interviewing, where we basically pair a company with no strings attached. Really, it's literally just an opportunity. Like I mentioned, the young woman in Barbados, we were just with Epic Games having career coaching opportunities, and she happened to be aligned with a manager who could potentially hire her. Which, how cool is that? I mean, it just he, her story made an impact on that manager. So when there was a position that was open and available, they were able to come back to her. And that's the kind of just avenues that we tend to open up. And we've also do our best to help educate women around things like negotiation skills. Right? That's critically important to be able to negotiate for yourself. And sometimes it's just a matter of educating them to allow them, when they get to that point in the interviewing process, to be able to speak up for themselves. And they, in many cases have been able to get 10, 15% more in pay or a hiring bonus, all from simply asking. Sometimes we don't think that asking is possible.
I first of all, I love what you just said about negotiation, because I feel
Yeah.
like that's a question our wise counsel has gotten from time
Oh,
to time over the years. It's not something that we're really taught how to do. And I also, frankly, have seen recently in the career coaching conversations I've had, especially in sales and technical sales roles, that they expect you to negotiate to show that you can do that, because
yes.
it's part of the job. right?
Yes,
And I
exactly.
think that's just one of the many skills that I think, women don't realize that, we should be leveraging.
Yep.
We're taught to be polite and right,
Hmm. Hmm. You're right.
and
You're
so
right.
right, and so I think
Yeah.
that I think that's wonderful that Dress for Success also can help with teaching
Yeah.
those skills that women really need to help them
Yeah.
advance in their careers
Yeah.
as well. That's great. Well, can you tell us about, is there a myth or a misunderstanding people often have about the organization or about the women that you serve?
Yeah. Well, oftentimes when people think about Dress for Success, they think about clothing. And that's critically important. Like, I highly recommend anyone to, if you are in need of freshening up your wardrobe or giving clothes away rather than taking it to, the Salvation Army, to consider giving it to Dress for Success. First of all, one of the things that people don't necessarily think about is our clientele is not a size zero, right? It's the everyday woman, and the average size is like a 12, and the average size shoe is a 10, right? And we don't necessarily correlate what we give to how it might help a woman in need. However, that being said, we will take the size zeros from the executives, because we do have the ability to resell and take that money and pour it back into the programs that we have. But there's also beyond just the clothing, there's the coaching, which we've already talked about. And you know some of the women that we serve don't necessarily realize that you can't go into a job interview in a mini skirt and a tank top, right? You have to present yourself in a manner to which you have the opportunity to receive the job. And sometimes it's just a matter of sitting with them and helping them make the selection of the outfit to which they can impress when they go on the job interview. But we also have services like the Going Places Network, which is like a 12-week program where we give them the skills along the way. For example, LinkedIn, that's critically important for them to be able to have like a professional online presence. And I have been to many events, especially lately, where nobody wants my business card, but they will ask you to take out your phone and use a QR code to connect with you virtually on LinkedIn. So teaching them those skills is critical. And then we have partnerships with companies like Google, and Google has this online certification that that you can pay to receive. But for our clientele, we have a partnership with them, which allows the women that we serve to be able to go on and get a Google license, to be able to help beef up their resume to then get that technical job.
Oh,
And
great.
by the way, I should mention that all of our services to the women that we serve are 100% free. And when there's a woman in need who perhaps doesn't have a car to be able to get to the boutique to be able to get the outfit, we will give her like a credit so she can Uber, or give her gas money to get there. Like, we have ways to make sure that people have everything that they need in order to receive our services 100%.
That's tremendous.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I don't think we think about the barriers to entry. I once had a job interview. One of the requirements was that I owned a car.
Oh, wow.
Right? And you think about that, right? And how many people aren't that fortunate
Right.
to have access to that kind of transportation, like might be something we take for granted. So I love that Dress for Success can help in that fashion. That's tremendous. That's
Mhm.
tremendous. Well, so let's talk a little bit about how the rest of us can help. So can you tell us about what's the role that volunteers play in supporting
Mhm.
Dress for Success's mission?
Yeah. This is one of the things I love about the organization. The number of people that we employ is relatively lean. I think we're teetering right around 7 or 8 for the entire organization, and we've already talked about like the impact, the ripple in the water that these individuals are able to help us make. But we would not be able to survive without our volunteers, and there are thousands of people across the triangle who at some point have volunteered. We're like 100% volunteer based in terms of like outreach. And last year, for example, we had 15,000 volunteer hours. And if you kind of just do some rough math and break it down to 40 hours a week, where somebody might be working a 50-hour year, that's almost 8 individual, like a full-time 8 head count when you think about it. I mean, that's pretty impactful. And there are so many opportunities just for you as an individual or for companies to come in. We've had companies come in and like help organize the warehouse when it comes to clothing. There's opportunities to bring your children. Like my kids are, my son's now graduated from high school and in college, but my daughter is in high school, and the two of them had a number of community service hours that they had to get before graduation. So being able to pull my kids together and go and serve, and like on a Saturday afternoon where we're receiving clothing from the extended community, just being able to stand out there, talk about the mission, greet the old man who just lost his wife and is giving everything that she owns, like the heart of an individual. Just so many stories. Like there's just lots of opportunity to give back. Of course, you can donate, and of course, you can attend events, but there are true opportunities. Like I said, it's always you go there prepared to give, but walk away, at least for myself, 100% of the time, I walk away with receiving more than I gave for that afternoon.
Oh, wow, that's powerful. Oh my gosh, I love
Yeah.
that story. Um, well, so talk a little bit about how can individuals and companies in the Triangle and beyond get more involved?
Yeah. I mean, so absolutely, in terms of volunteer opportunities, if you have a company, and I know that many of you are not in the Triangle area. We are a global organization there, and as I mentioned, Pat started her effort in the London office. There's lots of opportunity to give back. I mean, you could definitely volunteer in terms of a boutique, the career coaching, or just polishing of resumes. That's a very like small time commitment. Literally my first service was an hour and a half of my time. um, then you could attend one of our events, right? We have at least 2 fundraising events here in the Triangle. There's one in the fall, and I could certainly provide you, Wendy, the information around that. We do evangelize it heavily on LinkedIn as well, but there's opportunities to come and hear about the mission, to enjoy a meal, and have the opportunity to give back if you are so inclined. But there are other virtual opportunities as well right now with the COVID perspective in mind. Like you can have, if you are good in LinkedIn, right, you could volunteer to host a LinkedIn education session to the Going Places Network, and know when you walk away, like you've just had an impact on 40 women who will be able to take what you've told them, and you can see it, like literally when you have conversations, especially around things like LinkedIn. I'm connected to many of them, and you could see their profiles change and get stronger just from having that short 20-minute conversation with you. So there's
Oh,
a lot of opportunity, a ton. Just depends on how much time you have and where your passions lie.
I love that so much. And yes, as Michelle mentioned, Dress for Success is global. I'm going to post a link in the comments about how you can find your local Dress for Success. I'll post that in just a second. But can you talk a little bit about, then you mentioned company participation. Why is corporate partnership important, and how do those partnerships go beyond just writing a check?
Yeah. So relationships with corporations are critical because that's how the women find their jobs. And many times we'll have a job fair, whether it be virtual or in person. The really cool thing is, and I've witnessed in my own company since COVID started. Prior to COVID, everything was face to face, but since COVID hit, we've had a complete paradigm shift in our hiring practices, and a lot of corporations have the same effect. And now women, or we are finding that women are able to receive employment a little more easily, especially when it comes to those virtual opportunities,
Yeah.
to be able to gain employment through the relationships that we help develop, which are always growing leaps and bounds. Small companies, large companies, you name it. There's like the Ray. We have corporate relationships with all of them.
Oh, I love it. I think that's so great. Well, how do you measure the success, not just for the organization? So you've shared a few ways that you see it in the women you support. Are there other ways that you measure success for the women you're serving?
Yeah. So one of the really cool things that I've been around long enough to witness is seeing the women that we serve gain meaningful employment and then turn around and give back. And some of it, it's $20 a month in giving. Others are serving and doing community outreach, or being a part of what we're doing in terms of receiving donations or attending events. But the one of the most beautiful things, and there's two instances of this in my 9-year tenure with them, is women gaining employment enough to then take a seat on the board. And the board is usually 22 members strong, and there's 3-year service agreements where you serve for 3 years and roll off. There's obviously ebbs and flows as life sometimes gets in the way, and people may have to step back earlier than that. But being able to witness individuals go from practically impoverishment to serving on a board is like the ultimate blossom of a flower, or cocoon butterfly transformation. And I know those are just the ones that I've been witness to. Some of the other smaller examples happen all the time. The Barbados example I gave earlier is another just beautiful thing to be able to step back and witness.
Oh, those are tremendous, tremendous stories. Well, if you could wave a magic wand and solve one issue that Dress for Success faces today, what would it be?
Yeah. Oh, man. The thing that hurts my heart the most is our political climate right now. And I don't want to talk politics at all, but what I'm seeing is companies stepping back and hesitating to donate to good, the greater good. And it's not just Dress for Success. It's all nonprofits. And well, boy, if I could wave a wand, I would take that away, because um, being a female in the technology space, specifically in banking, we may have talked a little bit about that, and the imposter syndrome that I've had for 34 years. My goodness, like I'm an example of an individual who has always been in the less population, whatever, however you want to articulate that. I've just always been kind of an anomaly, and it doesn't change, right? 3 weeks ago, I hosted an event for SAS, and there were 300 men in the room, and I was the only one wearing a red suit. Right? But you know what? That's who I am, and I'm not going to change who I am. So if I could wave the sprinkle the pixie dust, that's what I would change. Just our attitude
Well,
towards the underprivileged individual.
I think you'll continue showing up for with your advocacy, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And that's
definitely.
what Pre-Sales Collective Wise, what we
Yeah.
offer as well, right? It just means our work in supporting women in the workplace is even more important.
Mhm.
For pre-sales, we still stand globally at 18% female identifying.
Yeah, yeah.
So I know many of us are often the only woman in the room too.
Mhm.
I think happens still frequently in
Mhm.
2025. But yes,
Yeah,
keep
yeah,
keep up with the advocacy and
yeah,
the tide will turn again.
yeah,
Um, and so what advice would you give to someone who wants to support women's empowerment but doesn't know where to start?
yeah. So the one thing, if I look back on my own career, like I said, I'm 34 years in now. The one thing that I would change if I could go back is I would encourage myself to give back earlier. I mean, I waited way too long. I was in my 40s before I even remotely considered doing anything in the nonprofit space. And I do try to coach people now and just encourage them. Yesterday, I had the privilege of being on a panel with some interns, and I said the same thing to them, right? You have a lot to give back. You may only be 19, 20, 21 years old, but the knowledge that you have, we'll just say around technology itself, is enough to be able to make a huge difference in a nonprofit such as like Dress for
Yeah.
Success of the Triangle, right? We as individuals have so much to give back, and if you could just recognize that and get involved early, that is the one thing. It's never too late. It's never too late to do the right
Yes,
thing.
yes.
And you have so
Oh, I
much to
love
give.
that.
No matter who you are, you have so much to give. Um,
I love that so much. Well, actually, you and I were talking about this previously as well, about serving on a nonprofit board, right?
yeah,
Volunteering on a board is a specific way of
yeah,
giving back, right?
yeah,
As a board member. And a lot of nonprofits would appreciate your expertise as a board member.
absolutely. Yeah,
It's something that I think a lot of women don't realize is a way they can contribute. But
yeah.
can you talk about what you see are the benefits of serving on a nonprofit board?
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to what drives you as an individual. For me, I'm a recovering people pleaser. And there's just some sense of validation that I get from helping others that I can't receive in any other way, right? It's hard for me to even put into words, but just the sense of being able to step back and seeing that you had an impact on somebody's livelihood. And we'll just go back to that young woman that I mentioned in the very beginning, right? I I don't know if her mother lived or not, but I do know that she, at the end of her tenure with Dress for Success, was able to get a job that had a path forward. And no matter what, she's going to be okay. And there are, there are tons of stories like that I could share with you.
Right, right,
Um,
right.
yeah, you always give back more than you receive, and
Yeah,
for me, there's
yeah.
no greater thing. No.
And honestly, in my research on corporate DEI, right, one of the things that the research has shown is that something else people really crave is a sense of meaning and purpose in
Mhm.
their work.
Yes.
And I believe this is a
Yes.
tremendous way
Yeah.
to feel like your work, like, so, like Michelle mentioned, your technology skills, a board might really
Yeah.
need those, right? You could be someone that has, I actually just added someone with social media skills to
Yes.
my other nonprofit board, very needed.
Yes.
Trust me, I don't have them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, beyond LinkedIn, I don't have like, I don't know. I don't know. How do I make a reel? I still don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
Um, but someone else out there does know and can really help. But something else that happened for me that I also advise when I'm doing career coaching is being on a nonprofit board is actually a fantastic career development opportunity for
Oh,
you,
sure.
to
Yeah.
grow as a leader as well, and learning about running a business and what that takes. And I just went to a board meeting last night to talk about our budget for our fiscal year begins July 1st. And that's an incredible skill to develop
Yeah.
that. When I first started on a nonprofit board, was not something I was doing in my day-to-day SE
Yeah.
career. And
Yeah.
now I'm in SE leadership, and it's a whole different ballgame. I would not have gotten here without that experience of being a leader on a nonprofit board.
Yeah.
So just something that, at least for me, has helped me from that way.
Yeah.
I love that so much. Okay, I want to
Yeah.
be mindful of time.
Yeah.
Um, and so before I open this up for questions, which I'll do in just a second, if
Mhm.
you could dream big, what is one thing you wish more people understood about economic empowerment for women?
Yeah. It goes back to the thought of I'm helping women, but I'm helping women with children, right? So when you empower a woman, and studies have shown this, right? In third world countries where I was just talking to a gentleman last week who was sharing that he's with a group of investors that invest in small businesses in underprivileged economic um, parts of the world. And he was sharing that you could give they could give a business loan to a woman in a community like that. And the ripple effect that it makes is so much bigger because women just are always usually thinking about others. And
Right.
you help a woman and she helps other women, and those women have children. And before you know it, the ripple in the water is huge. It like
Right.
monstrous tidal wave, right? All because the stone was thrown in the right direction. And how empowering is it to you to know that you're transforming the lives of families, communities, and the future of, I mean, ultimately generations, right? Giving them the economic empowerment to be able to, um, propel their livelihoods forward, and then subsequently, it has a domino effect, and that's honestly a beautiful thing.
That is absolutely a beautiful thing. All
Yeah.
right. Well, thank you
All right.
everyone for joining us today. We
Yes.
appreciate it. I hope you have a good
Okay.
afternoon and evening.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Thank you,
All right.
everyone. All right.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.